Welcome to the Peaked podcast, where I talk about gender identity ideology and other bad ideas, women's rights and free speech from a European point of view. All right, so we can start. So Agata Rossi, nice to meet you. I've seen you floating around on Twitter, like the good turf that you are. How are you doing today?
Very well, thank you. Nice to chat to you. It's a beautiful day in Sicily.
You're in Sicily. What a dream. I'm in Brussels. What a nightmare. It's no, it's terrible. I say that, but I do. Belgium has given me so much, but at the same time, it's not Sicily. So you're a Brit abroad, like David Allison I spoke to one time about Germany. This actually seems to be a trend because when I've reached out to people from different EU countries to talk to me about this stuff, I get a lot of, my English isn't good enough to speak to you. And this is often people I have spoken to before, and I think their English is fine, but they don't feel comfortable to talk on a recording like this. So it might be the case that the best place people to talk to me about what's going on with gender in these countries is expats who feel comfortable speaking English. So thanks for agreeing to come on. You were quite excited to talk to me. You have a lot to say about what's going on in Italy, is my suspicion.
Yes, I have a lot to say. So Italy is a very interesting country, and how the WPATH influence has taken over parts of Italy. There's a massive north-south divide. So from Rome and onwards, this is mainly something that's happening in the north. I was looking at WPATH membership in Italy, and there are 16 Italians, 15 of whom are either doctors or psychologists. The majority are either in Rome or a lot in Milan in the north. And Sicily, where I am, there is not one member.
Sorry, just to interrupt, Agata, I'm going to probably interrupt you a lot because I have so many questions. But when you say they're members of WPATH or EPATH or both? I guess once you're a member of EPATH, which is the European version of WPATH, you're automatically a member of WPATH. But do you know which one they're active in?
WPATH. I haven't checked EPATH, but these were all listed on WPATH as being Italian members.
And what kind of specialties are they? Clinicians? Are they all in psychotherapy, or are they surgeons, or what is it?
A mix, mainly endocrinologists and psychologists.
Okay. And what explains the north-south divide, do you think? Is it because there's more university hospitals in the north, or what's the...
I don't know. I think it's multifactorial. One thing I think that is worth mentioning is that I think to enter into gender identity ideology, you have to have a decent level of English. Mm-hmm. This is very much an English sort of dialect, the language mm-hmm. they use, the way they've corrupted the language. And so I think the level of English from sort of Rome onwards is much higher than in the south of Italy.
Okay, and also then your personal interest in this then is more on the medical side, because you were saying to me that you have a sort of medical adjacent activity now, but in the past you told me as a nurse for the NHS.
I did.
So yes. Just before we go on again with the story of Italy, we have this news now about the puberty blockers being banned by the NHS for use on children, except in clinical trials. Before we continue, I just realized, I remembered a question I want to ask you. Some people are saying on Twitter and elsewhere that this isn't new news. And I also was surprised that everyone is treating it as new news. So why is it? Isn't this what was already announced ages ago by the Tavistock, or what has changed now?
I'm not sure. I agree with you. Yes, that nothing seems to have changed really from the withdrawal of using puberty blockers routinely to just using them in clinical trials. I don't know if they've just come out and said this officially. I'm not sure what has actually changed. I don't know if this affects private clinics. Or Gender GP, which they're based outside of the UK. So I'm not really sure what has changed.
Okay. All right. So let's go back to Italy then. And so I was asking you, your personal interest, this is mostly on the medical side then, is that correct?
Absolutely. Yes. 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 So unlike the UK, Italy has not had an institutional capture. The National Health Service is still fairly sane, but there are little pockets of extremism. And right now, Careggi Hospital in Florence is under investigation for their use of puberty blockers. And in Italy, they don't use Lupron, they use something very similar called triptorelin. And two names consistently come up. There's Yiska Ristori, who's a psychologist, and Alessandra Daphne Fischer, who's an endocrinologist. And they have quite a cult following in Florence.
It's normal for endocrinologists to have a cult following. I guess you don't mean in the broader culture, you mean in the...
No. Yes, this particular duo seem to have quite a cult following. There's a mother who, she's Italian, but she lives in Spain. And she has not one, but two trans children. She has a blog. She's written, it's a very familiar story. She's, there's no father on the scene, as far as I can gather. And on the January the 23rd, an investigation into what was going on, or what is going on, at Careggi Hospital was started. This is a government investigation. And there have been some very vocal defenders of Yiska Ristori and Alessandra.
By whom? Who's defending them?
This is a mother. Her name is Camilla Vivian. She's the one that has a blog, and it's called...
Oh, I see. Okay.
Yes, Mamma di un figlio in rosa, mother of a boy in pink, which, I mean...
Oh, God. Jesus, how aggressive.
I know, absolutely. She lives in Spain, but she has... is defending them. She also openly states that there is absolutely no need for any type of psychotherapy prior to puberty blockers being administered. So she has some quite way out ideas.
So let me get this straight. She's a blogger and she's rallying the troops around these two people who are under investigation.
Yes.
And would be sort of like, would she have a big following of other parents who...
Well, not as big. I checked. She has very few followers on Twitter. She wrote a book. I don't know how well it sold. I think it's a very small group, actually. She certainly doesn't have the exposure that the very well-known Canadian mum of trans children, Amanda or Rowan Jette-Knox. She does not have that type of following at all. But, it's the same playbook.
When you say this duo have a cult following, you weren't talking about just her then. You're saying that in the medical community? No,
not the medical community. These are parents.
Only parents, okay.
Yes, parents who say that, the puberty blockers are life-saving drugs. Without them, their children would be dead. And, they're not particularly well informed. There's a lot of medical misinformation there, that, that they really are just a pause, that there's no long-term damage, that they save lives. And they obviously have not read the latest research from Finland.
And so just to ask a stupid, very basic question, what are these two doctors under investigation for? Because all puberty blocker use is off-label, I guess. So what did they do?
One of the main point is that they were administering puberty blockers without giving psychotherapy.
Okay.
So, yes. So they'll give them on demand, basically.
And so do you have any anecdotally, like, are we talking about, so if there's no psychotherapy, you mean somebody's just rocking up to the clinic with their kid and walking out with a prescription?
That's what it seems like. It really does. And there are mothers who defend this.
And okay, so these two doctors are under investigation for, like, was that hospital supposed to be following even WPATH guidelines, which WPATH guidelines even suggest that psychotherapy is necessary, I think, or is it all informed consent now? Maybe you can tell me the lay of the land at the moment, because I don't even know what it is WPATH recommends.
Yes. Generally, I mean, from my contacts in the medical world, people just look upon, blocking children's puberty as abusive, as absolutely insane. I'm not sure what the legal situation is, but the fact that I know even WPATH, Standards of Care 8, recommend therapy. So they were just, this couple, this psychologist and the endocrinologist, were really just, working off-piste. And it was an Italian politician actually who raised his concerns, and then the investigation started on January the 23rd.
And who notified the politician? Do we know?
We don't know. He's not in the Department of Health or anything like that, so I'm not quite sure who notified him. But well done him for bringing this up.
Bringing it up, and of course it shouldn't be relevant, but it is. Is that like a extremely extremely right-wing politician, or any type of?
He's a conservative politician, so he's from conservative.
And has his conservatism been used by opponents of the investigation to claim that it's all right-wing hit job?
Oh, absolutely, yes. That's
It's funny how the script is the same everywhere, isn't it?
It is absolutely yes. With the parents, the activist parents. The other thing that I think is interesting, and I don't know for sure, but Yiska is not an Italian name. The surname is, and then Alessandra Daphne Fisher. I wonder if they have an Italian parent, and that they. I know Alessandra Daphne Fisher did her medical degree in Florence, in Italy. So if they have a non-Italian parent, and that they have a good level of English. I'm not sure, but I think the connection in Italy to being supportive of children having puberty blockers, there's always a good level of English there. And the mother that has the blog, Un figlio in rosa, she actually speaks very good English as well.
So you're saying there's a very much outside Italy international sort of influence on all of this kind of activity in Italy? Would you say?
Absolutely, that's what I see. Yes.
And so, just to understand the picture as it stands, this duo are in the same hospital, not in the same department, but operate in the same sort of pathway for kids. Like one the psychologist will refer to the endocrinologist and get the tests done, and then they collude together, or they're working entirely separately.
No, it seems, I've seen online, they really do seem to be a duo. They're working together.
Okay. And is that part of like an official gender clinic, or are they just absolutely rogue?
No, it is part of a national health hospital, Careggi. So this is, the WPATH has managed to infiltrate an Italian national health hospital. Okay.
And so what has the press coverage been like?
Well, the press, so Huffington Post, which is sort of fairly left-leaning, it has been reported, but I think it's, we're waiting for the findings. But the left-leaning press in Italy has been fairly supportive of gender identity ideology in general. The WPATH, the files, that happened last week, that was not reported in any
reported at all.
Media in Italy. There's an online magazine called Tempi, which has a Catholic influence, and a journalist wrote a really fantastic article explaining the horrors of everything that had been found.
And again, like taking examples of, for example, detransitioners, or the serious side effects of puberty blockers from abroad, or are there Italian homegrown disaster stories?
A few, yes. So we don't have a high-profile detransitioner here. There's a journalist called Marina Terragni who has been very good at reporting on this, and she wrote just a very general sort of article about treatment for gender dysphoria, surgical and medical treatment. And the following day, she said that she received so many letters and emails from parents with the same story, and that it was during COVID lockdown, which was very strict in Italy, that their daughters became closed in their rooms, they became depressed, and then they took on a male gender identity, wanted testosterone. All these parents were very, very concerned and said that their mental health had deteriorated. But it was the same story. All this happened in lockdown. I think she published 7 or 8 of these messages. Yeah, and it was just a very similar story, and that, you know, some of them had been prescribed testosterone and their mental health had actually deteriorated.
And were they all over the country, or are they all from Florence hotspot?
Not sure. She didn't say where their location was. But
God, it's so terrifying, isn't it? And you are, as you work in the medical field, and you were telling me earlier that you're a medical writer. So
yes,
you probably have a good view on the kind of research that comes out of this world. And I just wanted to ask you, I have this PubMed alert and Google Scholar alerts for, you know, all research mentioning transgender and gender dysphoria and autogynephilia and all these keywords. And I never see anything like a study on how girls started to adopt male personas during lockdown. I've never seen any of these studies about, you know, not just the strictly medical stuff, but, you know, what are the other examples? You never see anything about, you know, okay, you see occasionally autism links or something. Does that surprise you as well? Are you like shocked at the lack of research into
absolutely
valid? What kind of research would you be expecting to see if the world was a normal place still?
Well, you know, after Marina Terragni published these letters from very concerned parents, and it's mainly girls. Why are girls finding it so horrific to be women in Italy? What's causing this denial of their biology?
But because you're British born and raised, yes. I guess you can see, you don't see that there's more of it in Italy among girls than there is, like, for example, in the UK. Do you think are you alluding to like over-sexualization in particular countries or
I don't, I mean, I do, I would expect, if it is that because of sexualization, I would expect more girls in Italy to be wanting to take on a male identity, but this seems to be happening more in the UK, Canada.
That's very interesting. If we could see if there's a correlation between like how shittily girls are treated in their teenage years and by men, and like the sexualization and the attention and stuff, that would be really interesting.
It would, wouldn't it?
So you're saying, and that's what's crap as well about the lack of attention to this subject, because if the media were talking about it, ultimately this is a media failure, I think. So some days I just think it's all a media failure, because if they had talked about it, this would be over so quickly. But if it were being reported everywhere, we might come to some conclusions about, oh, what's driving girls into this? And if we said, oh, well, you know, they're much more sexualized, or there's a lot more negative attention on girls in Italy, for example, than there is in, say, I don't know, Canada. So that explains maybe why they're, you know what I mean? We'd have good, at least anecdotal evidence as to, or, you know, better guesses, educated guesses as to what's driving it, you know, but nobody's talking about it. And I haven't heard anything about Italy, like really, except there was a story about a year ago, maybe, where there was some Italian doctors. I can't remember. Do you remember what I'm referring to? Some Italian doctors came out like, I might be mixing it up with France. I know that there's one organization for something Degenero. Do you know that organization? I'm waffling now. I'm probably going to have to cut this bit out.
There's Generazione D, which is a group of very concerned Italian parents.
Yes,
they are. Yeah, excellent. They obviously have a good level of English because, you know, they share a lot of information. They've translated everything from the WPATH files. And have shared it on their Twitter page. They are excellent, very much, you know, evidence-based. But Marina Terragni has been probably the main voice, the journalist in Italy, to share the horrors of what's going on. But I think, on the whole, I think this is the fact that WPATH has succeeded in infiltrating national health organizations around the world is a failure of medical safeguarding. And this, as far as I know, there is no gender clinic in Sicily. And so that gives me great hope for medical safeguarding in Sicily. And I've spoken to many doctors here who are just appalled at what's going on. And I was chatting to a friend who's an anaesthetist. And he could not believe that there were 12, 13-year-old girls having mastectomies in the USA. And I showed him proof, and he just said, "Ma, una pazzia." It's crazy. And so a lot of, I think, doctors in Sicily just look at this as some fringe insanity that's going on in the anglosphere. But it has now infiltrated Italy. But there was, it was very quiet. There was nothing in the press until fairly recently. We had an interesting... Yes, go ahead.
Sorry, just because this woman who's the journalist who's doing the most to expose this, did you say she's the one who writes for the Catholic-backed publication? Or
No, that was another one. She writes, I think, for Corriere della Sera, for the women sort of section, which is, a fairly central, runs a little bit to the left. So that's been really good. She's been absolutely wonderful. She wrote that we had an interesting case in Sicily a few months ago. I think 6 or 7 months ago. And this was a case of a man in Agrigento, which is on the west coast. And he had a bureaucratic change of documents to become a female. He has not had any surgery or hormone. He's a cross-dresser, but he now has female documentation. And I like to think that the judge that approved this did this out of kindness. But I don't think the judge really realized the ramifications of this for every single woman in Italy. So Marina Terrani did quite a sympathetic interview with him. She didn't ask any hard-hitting questions or anything like that. But I don't get the impression he's
with the judge or the cross-dresser?
The cross-dresser.
The cross-dresser.
So he now has, official, all his documentation has been changed. But that's very rare.
Are you saying that that's like a rare thing to happen in Italy? Because there was some sort of old school. Oh yeah. So you're basically saying this is a break from the old school way of doing things. This is a self-ID de facto.
Absolutely. That was the first. Yes.
Okay.
Because it was very, very strict before. They had to live as the opposite sex for 2 years. They had to have extensive counselling. So this was the first case of self-ID.
And without any national self-ID legislation being proposed, or has that been brought up? Has that been proposed already?
No, I think this was just a sort of a one-off case.
Okay. And so I just want to go back to what you were saying there about how WPATH guidance has captured all of these national health systems, because it's one thing for private clinics or whatever, but the national health systems, that's what you're saying is shocking, because there should be better safeguards, I guess.
100%. I see this as a massive safeguarding failure. If WPATH manages to enter an institution, or as in the UK, the whole NHS, I just think that's it's so shocking.
And
it should not be happening.
You're making me think that I used to think, okay, activists captured the institutions, but what does that mean? And so in sort of, without really thinking about it, I was assuming that, the trainings start, the formazione or whatever, they come in and they say, right, from now on, you have to do X, Y, Z. But that's not where the activists are placed along the timeline of, leading to a child being prescribed testosterone or puberty blockers, whatever. Where the activists are placed in this story is they are the doctors.
Yes, absolutely. They are the doctors.
Well, it's not external activists coming to hospitals saying from now on, well, I mean, there is that, I guess. Maybe you can tell me a bit about that as well. Like, because in the NHS, they're like, oh, we have our LGBTQ staff network or whatever. And then they impose... that would be the clinicians themselves, I guess, would make up the staff networks. But do you have those kind of groups within the hospitals that are putting on this pressure, or is it just the doctors themselves who've trans their own kids?
Yes, the doctors. There's very little activism going on here. When I look at, what's going on in the UK, the protests and the violence, that is not happening at all in Italy. So there are just these little sort of little small groups that have managed to set up shop, really, I guess, in a national health hospital. And I think the hospital management also is at Careggi Hospital is to blame for not knowing what's going on, or whether, he allowed this, I don't know. But the fact that this has happened is shameful. And, I think of all the places where this is not going on, and that is, as I say, it's good medical safeguarding on an individual level from each doctor or psychologist, and good hospital management as well. But the Ordine dei Medici, so that's sort of the equivalent of the Italian Doctors Association, has not really issued any guidelines. The Department of Health, Italian Department of Health, has not issued any guidelines. So I think this caught them a little bit by surprise.
Yeah. It's really shocking that, for people who aren't familiar with this sort of public healthcare world, it's really shocking that such a thing can be prescribed off-label according to no guidelines, without any official guidelines. It makes me kind of worry about, It
makes me very, very worried. Yes.
You've been in the industry, well, not the industry, but you've been in that field, in the medical field, for years and years and years. Have you ever seen anything quite like this, where, let's imagine alternate scenario, where it's discovered by the hospital authorities that somebody's been prescribing something crazy off label, according to their own or to activist demands? Like, is there any equivalent?
Yes. No, the only one I can think of is the Netflix program Bad Doctor, about the Italian doctor who, did you see that?
No, I didn't.
Oh, and he'd I think it was 3D printed tracheas, and he was inserting them into patients. They all died. Now, he was working at the Karolinska Institute in Sweden, which also, I think, while he was working there, they had the puberty blocker scandal going on.
This is a real story.
Yes, it's on Netflix. And he was just an absolute maverick. And the fact that he couldn't work in Italy, I think, shows how, medical and surgical safeguarding is generally at a very high level here in Italy. So he was working in Sweden, then it was all discovered, and he's lost his medical license.
And just to understand how he could have gotten a job in Karolinska, are they more like innovative experimental type of hospital, or his record was hidden?
I'm not sure. I mean, the Karolinska has also been hit by a massive, by the puberty blocker scandal. So I think every institute, would likes to make a name for themselves, to do something pioneering, be a world first. And that drive to discover something new, I think, can sometimes negatively affect medical safeguarding. They forget, in their drive to do something amazing. Medical safeguarding gets a back seat.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so this is all very interesting. I didn't know any of this. So let's move on to maybe less medical stuff and talk about so you're saying there's not much activism in general, no street protests, there's no massive turf island style backlash, but do you have at least some organized like women's groups, or do you have threats to free speech in any way that has galvanized free speech defenders?
No, we're very lucky. We have, I think it's called Feminist Post. That's an Italian group. They've been very, very good at bringing light to this, but they have a small following. And then there's a dreadful group. They're called Non Uno di Meno. And their idea is to help eliminate violence against women. But for them, a trans woman is a woman. So they are, this was supposed to be a group supporting and trying to eliminate violence against women, but they support also trans women. So
men and women's prisons.
They are as far left as they come. But no, there's very little activism here. A lot of people just think this is some insane, the puberty blockers, the trans sort of nonsense. They just think it's something weird from America. So I don't think people really understand that it has actually infiltrated Italy. Well,
sorry, go ahead.
No, I mean, after obviously the Careggi investigation going on, that has woken a lot of people up.
But so would you say now on a general level that the vast majority of the population of Italy is at least aware now that trans is a thing, some kids are having their puberty blocked, but it's only happening abroad? Or have we moved into the domain of, that crazy story that we've all heard all along about Americans and in British blocking puberty? Well, that's arrived on our shores. Where are we in the culture?
Right. So trans is nothing new in Italy. There was a member of parliament about 10 years ago, quite a high profile trans identified male So, it was just it wasn't a big thing. But this whole new cohort of children and rapid onset gender dysphoria, yes, people are waking up to it. And I think the general opinion is that it's just insane.
Hold on just a sec. Yeah. So when you say, I'm really glad you brought that up, because it reminded me of something. You're saying that trans is not a new thing in Italy. I have heard that there is a sizable population of transgender prostitutes from Latin America in Italy. Would you say that's correct? Have I heard?
Yes, that is correct. Also, on Pornhub, the most popular genre in Italy is trans porn.
This is incredible. Question, do you know, what's your best guess as to who the clients of those transvestites are?
Oh my goodness, I have no idea.
Isn't it funny that nobody ever asks themselves that? I never thought about it before until one day I was thinking, I see a kind of a link between, there are many reasons why we're in the situation that we're in now, but I see a strong link between the institutionalization of trans, and I'm not talking about the activists, the scrappy activists who are trying to promote trans rights as a human rights cause. I'm talking about the institutionalization of it, and the money behind it is linked largely to the last holdouts with HIV. The people the most likely to be infected with HIV are transgender identifying men who sell receptive sex to men. And they are more likely to have HIV, and they're much more likely to be off the radar of the health authorities. So when you see that, WHO is asking for legal gender recognition, USAID is asking for legal gender recognition, all these institutions are asking for legal gender recognition, not because they think transvestitism is a human right, but because they're really trying to get to grips with the hardest to reach HIV victims. And
yes.
So what do you think about that theory?
I'm not really informed on that at all, really. I know that HIV is going up in Italy, and this is because amongst men, and they're not wearing condoms. So there needs to be a campaign.
It's going up,
condom use. Yes, slight increase.
There's another very controversial reason for that, according to the European Centres for Disease Control. And do you know what it is?
No.
It's immigration, but we're not supposed to talk about it.
Oh, really? Gosh.
Yeah. Well, so this is something that's very, very delicate. And, it brings up the question, what's the point of journalism? Because I follow this very closely, and I see reported that HIV is on the rise all over Europe, but we never get the reason why. And when we do get the reason why, it's very often far down the last line of the last paragraph of the article. But the ECDC has said it themselves. It's not the only reason, but it's one of the big reasons.
Yes.
And it's hard to talk about, because you say to yourself, well, is the job of, some journalists and editors have decided that it's much better off not cause societal unrest by bringing this up, because it would be very controversial. On the other hand, should they tell us, wouldn't it make citizens safer if they knew that this is one of the sources? And, in Ireland, for example, we have immigration centres are doubling as brothels, because there's women in there who have nothing to do, and they're not allowed out, and, all this stuff. So very controversial issue. But just going back to the clients of these prostitutes, when I started looking into this, like the institutionalization of trans, again, the money, seems to be a lot of push coming from these institutions that fight HIV. So I went to the red light district. We have a special red light district for female prostitutes in Brussels. And
right.
I tried to find as many as I could to ask them, who are your clients? But it's really difficult, because first, they don't speak English or French or anything, because they're all from Latin America. There were some from Morocco.
Yes.
And they were saying, they are men. And I'm like, yeah, I know they're men. Are they gay men? And it's like, well, technically, you would imagine they're gay men if they're men having sex with men, but these female prostitutes were all saying hetero. They're saying,
my goodness.
Yeah, so it's straight men. It's the same guys who were looking up female porn in Italy. They're all straight guys. This is what they're into.
Yes. I think there's quite a lot of closeted homosexuality here. I'm absolutely sure.
Would you think it's that? Because I think that it's very delicate conversation, but I think that in Latin America as well, it's seen as kind of an okay and non-gay and macho hetero thing to do, to have sex with a man with a breast implants who has like over-exaggerated features of a woman.
Oh gosh, yeah. Since I've been here, when I arrived, I was shocked at just casual homophobia. Things are much, much better now.
Right.
But yeah, there's still quite a lot of casual homophobia. So I can see. So
you think it's more likely to be internalized homophobia than gay men with a fetish?
Absolutely. Yes, I think so. Yes.
I didn't know. Yeah, I suppose it's very homophobic culture, I guess. Do you think like this sort of this general Italian conservatism is kind of the bulwark against gender madness?
Yes and no. I'm sure there's an influence. Everybody here, is christened Catholic. I don't know anybody who actually is a regular attender at church. Mm-hmm. But I think, there's that Mediterranean masculinity, which I think is almost a barrier to transgenderism entering. And then I think, with children, no healthy child takes on a gender identity. And children here are physically and mentally healthier. They have a healthy diet. We have, plenty of sun. So they're not low on vitamin D. They have the support of these multi-generational families. They're outdoors a lot more, especially during their long summer holidays. So I think just generally they're healthier.
But when you said that there was a trans MP, did people mock that person, or did they sort of accept it as?
No, it was just, sort of another crazy moment in Italian politics. I can't remember his name, but he has come out, since everything became very aggressive. He has come out in support of children transitioning. I don't really watch that much Italian television, to be honest. But he was just sort of accepted for what he was. I don't think people saw him as a woman. It was just a transvestite.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. On that question of these words that we're throwing around, transvestite, crossdresser and stuff, I'm really interested in this because I would love to know at what point, when did the memo go out that people had to stop using the word transvestite? And when I go back through the old records, there's a really good resource called the Digital Transgender Archive, and they really put everything on there. There are no secrets. It's really well maintained because I think there's a lot of money behind it. And while in Ireland, for example, they've tried to retcon our queer history, they never speak about the words transvestite or whatever because it's just, that all that was brushed under the carpet. But in this Digital Transgender Archive, they have all sorts of information about how men self-identified as transvestites. They were absolutely adamant that they were not female or women. They were just men who liked to relax in clothes. When you were growing up, do you have any memory of that in the UK of what a transvestite was, and then at some point then suddenly that wasn't a thing anymore? Do you have it was so rare, you probably don't, but I'm very interested to hear.
Yes, I was aware of what a transvestite was, but the term transgender, that all exploded when I'd left the UK. So the term was
that was what year, more or less?
I left 1999 to go and work in the US.
Okay.
And it just wasn't really talked about. But yes, cross-dressers or drag queens, that type of thing. But transgender, I'm not sure when that came in. Here they don't talk about transgender, the general population. It's just trans. They just use trans. He's a trans. So that there hasn't been this capture of language. Oh, I saw something interesting on Reddit, Trans Italia, and this is quite frightening. So about a year ago, there were 400 followers of the subreddit. I checked it a couple of days ago. It's almost 900 now.
No way. And you think, do you get the impression that those are people identifying as trans or curious people wondering?
Well, I think people who are sort of questioning. And it's interesting that the language they use. So there was a girl had made a post, and so in Italian, the word non-binary is non binario if you're male, and non binaria is if you're female. And last year, I know, it's fantastic, isn't it? Last year, Giorgia Meloni brought in a law that in all government official documentation, Italian has to be used. So she was ahead of her time, or maybe she knew what she was doing. But anyway, so I looked at a post on the Trans Italia subreddit, and it was a girl, and she had written, "Io sono non-binary, sto cercando un posto dove posso fare il top surgery." So I am a non-binary, I'm looking for somewhere to have top surgery, instead of saying una mastectomia bilaterale, a bilateral mastectomy.
Yeah.
So the language, you can see it's infiltrated. That there are many people in Italian who would not have a clue what she was saying. And I thought that from a linguistic point of view, that was fascinating. Well, they all use the gender identity language. And they just
in Belgium and in France, interestingly, and the French-speaking world generally, they have come up with their own. So they've translated them. So instead of saying "je suis non-binary," they say "je suis non-binaire," which is masculine again, which is funny. But they're all non-binaire.
Yes.
And also they say what is the other one I was going to say? You reminded me of. Oh yeah, non mort, my dead name. Do you know what do they say in Italy?
I've not come across the dead name thing yet.
And they haven't messed around with the articles yet, like the le, la, le, il.
No, they're trying. So, because obviously Italian is a gendered language. So studenti is students, and obviously the masculine takes priority. So they put student and then an asterisk. So that they, but I mean, people just take the piss out of it. Really, it's not taken seriously. But yes, that is coming in, because I always think that Italian being a gendered language was almost a sort of a protection against the infiltration of the insanity. But that was I was quite shocked to see the posts on Reddit. I also came across an Italian surgeon who works in Spain, and he does mastectomies. He calls it top surgery, and he is appealing to Italian patients. And he wrote, "Come and have your top surgery in Spain, because there's less bureaucracy." What he means with less bureaucracy is less medical safeguarding.
Yeah, so because that's where the Irish girls go. They go to Madrid. It's not this guy in Madrid, is it?
Moscatiello is his name.
No, that's not the same one.
So quite a few have found a safe refuge in Spain.
Yeah, I think that it's awful. I'm in some of these Facebook groups for the young girls, and once they hit 18, they've already got their Ryanair flights booked to go to Madrid. Like, it's horrific. And they're all talking about which hotels in Madrid, which where you get the bus, where the surgery is, and, if there's a coffee shop around so your family can go. It's just dark. It's the darkest thing I've ever seen. But just to come back to something about language, because I'm really interested in this topic, the French have come up with yell. And yell is supposed to be a mix between il and el. And that's supposed to be the non-binary pronoun. So, and I have to say, in any other context, I would be delighted by this, because I love the evolution of language. I think it's cool. Yes. I'm not like the French. The French are very much like, we need to conserve all our words. Like they're in a museum, and I love this, but it just, when I heard this yell, and they're also sincere with it, and you just sort of want to say, bravo, young people, for having such a creative imagination, and for, messing with these old, what's the word? It's not institutions, these old rules. But at the same time, you just think it's okay to play around with language, but you're actually doing genuine harm there. Especially to girls. Here, it's a lot of young gay girls who are going through this. It's horrific.
Oh, it's awful, absolutely awful. I don't know when the Careggi report is going to come out, but there was a little leak. I think it was ANSA, the news agency, reported that it had been confirmed that children had been given puberty blockers without any psychotherapy. So the mother of the trans child wrote It's already been decided. But I find it incredible that, you know, the research on puberty blockers is, there's not really any. And they're quite happy for their children to have medicine off-label.
What's your most charitable explanation for that?
I think they see themselves as brave mothers, you know, letting their children be used for pioneering medicine. I think deep down they know they're dangerous. They must know. And I think it was Jordan Peterson who spoke about this, that they're all cluster B mothers, you know, and I think that the mother, she's made her living out of having 2 trans children. And I do think, you know, there was a failure to screen for Munchausen's by proxy.
Oh, yeah. Good Lord. Yeah, I never even thought about that. This would be ideal for that, wouldn't it? I have another question for you, seeing as you're medically minded. I thought it was funny when the WPATH files came out, and then everyone who is of the same mind as us was saying, okay, here we go. We're going to show that WPATH guidelines are trash, and we need to abandon them immediately. On the TRA side, that's also what they've been saying. I mean, to not everyone, but a lot of trans rights activists despise the gatekeeping nature of the WPATH guidelines. They despise its legacy as Harry Benjamin medicalization of trans, you know, because for a long, long time, before it changed name from Harry Benjamin, whatever it was, to WPATH, and after, it was very medically driven. It was the medical template for transsexualism is where it comes from. And despite the best efforts of activists, they were trying to maintain that sort of, this is a medical condition and it's, you know, a pathology and it needs to be treated as such. Like most of anyone born after 1995 is saying that this is absolutely, you know, WPATH should be thrown in the bin. So it's kind of, have you thought about that? Like, you know, what is the you know, what could replace it among the most strident activists who say, well, yes, we do agree that this rule book was awful. Let's throw it in the bin and replace it with something else. You know, that's kind of what worries me.
Yes, I think, did you read the interview? I think it was a couple of days ago, the American Andrea Long-Chu?
That horrible creep. Yeah.
Dreadful person. And I think there are people who just, you know, they see it as a lifestyle choice. They don't want any medical gatekeeping at all. And that you can just order your, you know, your medication without even seeing a doctor. They don't want any informed consent. They don't want any rules. They're quite maverick, really. It's just approach.
Somebody said to me before, like a lot of the young girls who are getting bilateral mastectomies, it's just a form of, like, you know, extreme body modification. Like young girls used to give those big huge hoops and loops in their ears, holes in their ears, whatever. Like it's just the extreme form of that. But so it's kind of disingenuous then, because these people use kind of the cloak of legitimacy of WPATH, while all along, as revealed by Andrea Long-Chu's essay, they actually were saying, well, yeah, actually, you know, we didn't really mean it either, that we people should just, this is our argument, in fact, people should be able to do extreme body modifications without any oversight, because if they said it that way, all the parents and all the clinicians and everyone would say absolutely not. But they use the language of the medical templates to get this far. Absolutely,
yes. I think you know, it does seem to attract a specific type of person. You know, they're vulnerable and they're taken advantage of. They find, I think Stella O'Malley has been very good about talking about the different cohorts. You know, people feeling a little bit isolated, and then suddenly they find their rainbow glitter unicorn family. You know, and they're taken in and radicalized. But it is so worrying. Very, very worrying.
I have a last question for you, Agata, which, by the way, isn't your real name. Your pseudonymous, if I don't know how to pronounce that word. Would there be professional ramifications for you if you were to come out under your real name?
Not in southern Italy at all, because there's very good medical gatekeeping here. Potentially in little radicalized places like Florence or Milan, potentially. Yeah. So yes,
in case.
protect myself.
Yeah. I just thought of something there actually. Isn't there like the siège of the, I don't know how you say that in English, the siège, the HQ of the European like sexology association is in Italy? Do you know anything about that?
I don't know. No. There are lots of little sort of fringe organizations. I know that the mother who has the blog, who writes about her 2 trans children, had said that, we are supported by all these organizations, a whole list of them. And I hadn't heard any of them. The one that wasn't there, the most important, was the Ordine dei Medici, Italian,
The one that counts.
Yes. So I thought, right, anybody can set up a little
yeah, of course. Just like WPAT is.
Absolutely, yes. So I shared that Andrew Doyle's Free Speech Nation. I thought that was superb.
The GB News.
I'm sorry?
The GB News thing that he had last. Yeah, okay.
He had some excellent speakers on. It was interesting who declined to come on. I thought it was very well researched, and I shared it with Generazione D, the parents group in Italy, just to let them know, what's going on around the rest of the world. But that was very hopeful. But I thought Robin Moira White came across very, very badly. I mean, good on him for having the courage to come on, but he came across so sexist. So I think it was just
He's one of those old school ones, though, like he would have grown up in a time when it was just really a degrading thing, much worse than now, like to be female. And that's his whole kick. Like he sees women as shit, like he does,
doesn't he?
He has an extreme humiliation kink, like, and he just, these people are narcissists. My last question I have for you, and it kind of links to this sexology association question I was asking you earlier. Yeah, because I've come across, maybe it's the European Association of Sexology or whatever, but I think their base is in Italy. And in any case, they're having I tried to get a media pass to their annual conference this year, because I think a lot of this stuff gets discussed there, and there's a lot of these sort of lobbying associations. They put this special emphasis now on sexual rights, which is a whole thing, and part of sexual rights is transvestite, transsexual, transgender rights or whatever. And I think they have a big base in Italy, and their conference is always in Italy, so I'm going to try and go this year. But my question for you was, the other day I was saying that I think the UK has had so much success. I was saying this in one of the WhatsApp groups I'm in to all these TERFs. I said the UK has so much success, but with this, and you've got a Conservative government and you've gotten really far. But now we see UK Labour is planning on, conversion therapy, hate speech, all the works.
Yes.
And the EU countries, meanwhile, are voting for right-wingers in droves. So now we see in Portugal, we see in the Netherlands, Ireland would happen too if we had any real right-wing opposition. Belgium, I think they're going to be successful as well. France, quite possibly too. So you have all of this surge of right-wing governments. So I think the roles might be reversed. And I said this in this TERF group the other day, and a British TERF said to me, "Oh no, but you can't underestimate the amount of expertise we have and the amount of experts in the UK, and good institutions and all this stuff." And while I think that's true, when you look at a country like Italy, you've also got a really good and robust, industries and experts and centers of expertise and stuff, don't you?
Yes. So I think the fact that the government was intervening, before it's even sort of had chance to take off, is thank goodness for the government. So they've, intervened when they should have. Whereas I think with the British government and other countries, they just let it go on for far too long. Something I noticed, Gender GP used to have a doctor in Rome, and it wasn't an Italian name.
Really?
And yes. And I checked the other day, there is no trace of gender GP in Italy at all. I think a lot has been going on behind the scenes. And also the Customs Department are very strict on picking up drugs. So, hormones coming from wherever they come from, coming from abroad, they are intercepted fairly effectively, which I think is very good. So lots has been going on that we don't know about. And
because you've got like really well established, respected institutions in Italy that probably won't let this get out of hand.
Absolutely. So the moment, as far as I know, no surgery is allowed for minors. So you have to be 18 and you have to see a psychologist. So the safeguarding has held up, and it was, children with puberty blockers at Careggi, the first sign that something was going very wrong. The government has intervened, but I just think, when we look back and think, how did all this happen? South Italy can really hold its head up high. They didn't allow themselves to be influenced or captured, and that is very, very reassuring. Very good safeguarding going on in Italy.
Yeah, in Belgium it's not the case at all. Belgium always wants to be the most progressive, so they just do the worst first.
Yes.
Yeah, the thing I wanted to talk to you about, before I let you go, was so why Turf Island is Turf Island and is so good at this is also a reflection of how bad the situation is maybe in the UK, because they were sort of caught unawares, weren't they? Like before anyone knew what any of this stuff was, it was already in British institutions almost.
Absolutely, yes. I think British women, Turf Island, they are incredible. They've inspired me. There isn't, we don't have, we're not so organised here in Italy. But, it hasn't spiralled out of control here as it has in the UK. But British turfs, good for them. They're incredible. They have achieved so much, coming at it from all angles. So, huge admiration to them.
One last question then, to understand the context in Italy a little bit more. Do you have like networks of WhatsApp groups of women or clinicians or other medical adjacent people who are concerned, or like parents in school? Is any of that going on, or is it still too fresh?
No, I think it's too fresh. So sex education is not obligatory to be taught in schools in Italy, but most do. And they tried to bring in a sort of a gender element. Parents went nuts, and then especially they went even more nuts when they found out that at the private schools in Milan and Rome, they weren't teaching them, gender nonsense. So that was it was very good that came to light, and they said,
hold on, sorry.
Our children.
So in the private schools, so the fee-paying schools, they were not teaching them gender nonsense?
Nope. No. So Italian mothers, do not annoy an Italian mama. And they were saying, you're using our children as guinea pigs. This is not right. So, and I don't really have much to do with schools here, but they kicked off about that. Rightly so. Yeah. But it's still, life is still very, very normal here. I've never been asked my pronouns. I've never even seen a trans flag in Sicily. Our hospital software is male or female. So, unlike the UK where they have all these bizarre genders. So there is, everything is still fairly normal here, with just a few little hotspots, which are hopefully being dealt with.
Yes, cool. That's good to hear. Thank you so much, Agata, for talking to me.
A pleasure, an absolute pleasure.
If you like my work, you can subscribe to my newsletter by going to peaked.substack.com and taking out a paid subscription.